Raise your claws if you seriously miss Wolverine on the big screen. Sure, Logan was the perfect send-off for the character, but there's no such thing as too much Wolverine. And although we've seen Hugh Jackman play the mutant a whopping 9 times in different movies, there could have been so many more opportunities to see Wolverine that we unfortunately missed out on. This video is all about the planned Wolverine movies that never happened, and the craziness that led to most of their cancellations. Be warned, some of these movies have actors who aren't Hugh Jackman playing Wolvie, which have caused a few audience members to faint out of pure shock and horror. I just wanted to warn you right off the bat so you can prepare yourself. Ready? Let's get into it. Can you believe James Cameron has never directed a superhero movie? I can't. What, is he just too busy making Avatar sequels that we'll maybe see sometime in the next 10 years? His style and general attitude seem perfect for a comic book adaptation. Wait, didn't he direct an Aquaman movie at one point? Yeah, it starred Vinny Chase. Oh wait, no, that was from an episode of the TV show Entourage. My mistake. Maybe one day we'll see Cameron suit up to take on a superhero flick, but for now, we can only imagine the possibility of what a Cameronized superhero movie would look like. Though actually, this pipe dream almost happened back in the early 90s, when Cameron and his then wife, Catherine Bigelow, were in serious talks to produce and direct a potential X-Men film. And man, this movie sounds crazy. So when I say Wolverine, what image pops up in your head? Yeah, definitely Hugh Jackman. He's tall, he's buff, he kicks serious butt, and what he did with the character is nothing short of iconic. Now what if I told you that for Cameron and Bigelow's potential movie, they were looking at Bob Hoskins, the guy from Who Framed Roger Rabbit and the legendary Super Mario Bros. Movie, to play Wolverine. Bob Hoskins and Hugh Jackman definitely look, different. But surprisingly, Hoskins might have been even more comic accurate than Jackman was. Although he's one powerful mutant, Wolverine in the comics is only 5'3", and he's not your average lean, mean superhero. No, he's a little bit stocky. Hugh Jackman is 6'2" in real life and built like a leading man. So although they totally aced the hairstyle with Jackman, appearance-wise, early 90s Hoskins was probably a closer fit to the character if they really wanted to embrace its comic roots. So here's the rundown on this movie. Cameron was in talks to produce and his wife Bigelow was going to direct. Hoskins was eyed for Wolverine and Angela Bassett was a top choice to play Storm. So why were we robbed of our first epic X-Men team-up movie? It's all Spider-Man's fault. No, really it is. While he was developing the X-Men movie, Cameron became more interested in making a Spider-Man movie instead and started working on putting together a hard R 90s Spider-Man film. Oh man, that's a story for a different day. But that was the first hurdle this movie had to overcome. And then it fell apart completely when the production company that was working on it, Carol Co., went bankrupt due to some big box office bombs, and the rights to X-Men went back to Marvel. Of course, they didn't stay there, as Fox, who was so impressed with the X-Men animated series, purchased the rights from Marvel in 1994, eventually paving the way for the X-Men franchise we all know and love. Well, mostly love. Some of those sequels aren't great. You know which ones I'm talking about. So with Cameron and Bigelow forced to step aside, we could only speculate on what their movie would have been about. Would it have launched the Wolverine character to the same iconic heights as Jackman's portrayal did? Would we ever have had Jackman as Wolverine if Cameron's film was made? That's a tough question, and I don't think I could live without seeing Jackman's Wolverine shred through bad guys or insult Cyclops. So as much as I hate to say it, maybe it's for the best. Plus, we don't know how Cameron would have handled the movie. Knowing he wanted to make a heavy-duty R-rated Spider-Man film, does that mean he wanted the X-Men film to also be R-rated? Could that be a thing? I mean, maybe. We know that Wolverine works in the R-rated setting, but it would have been a little risky back then. Though you know who always thought Wolverine should be R-rated? Zack Snyder. Which isn't surprising. I think Zack Snyder believes everything should be R-rated. I can't wait to see his hardcore, violent take on the My Little Pony franchise coming next year to a theater near you.
Gotcha!
Fine, that's not true, but I'd believe it if I heard it. Anyway, back in 2007 when 300 was released, he gave an interview talking about how he wanted to make an R-rated Wolverine movie. He was quoted saying, "It would be cool, an R-rated superhero movie. That's just cool. I don't care what it is. Wolverine would be cool if it was rated R." So yeah, I think he thinks it's cool? I couldn't tell from the 7 times he said it in one sentence. Obviously, Snyder saw the potential of a darker Wolverine movie, and surprisingly, Snyder almost had the chance to direct not just 1, but 2 X-Men films. He was one of the names under consideration for directing X-Men The Last Stand, but was too busy with 300, and then again he was considered to direct X-Men Origins Wolverine, which he couldn't do because of Watchmen. And with his quote, it's a safe bet that he would have fought for an R-rated Wolverine movie. And on his own, that's perfect. But does the R rating work for the entire X-Men roster? Let's forget solo Wolverine films for a moment and focus on the entire X-Men. Wolverine on his own is always fun, but there's a reason why fans are dying to see him team up and face off against other Marvel heroes. His gruff, no-nonsense attitude is often the perfect foil for a lot of other good guys. And although we've only seen him interact with other mutants at this point, that almost wasn't always the case. Recently, it was revealed that back in 2011, there was a plan to make an epic crossover movie that featured the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and other Marvel heroes pitted against each other. Think of it as Fox's attempt to do a civil war before the MCU could do it. The movie would have seen Johnny Storm explode while trying to apprehend a villain, which sparks a superhero registration act that some heroes support and other heroes rebel against. One of the big set pieces would have been a fight between Wolverine and Mr. Fantastic, and would have ended with the stretchy superhero pinning Wolverine down, extending his hands until they were only a molecule wide, and then using them as scissors to cut Wolverine's arms off. Whoa! Thanks to extremely lackluster portrayals, the live-action versions of Mr. Fantastic have been seriously disappointing. But if we saw Reed Richards take down Wolverine like that, man, then he's like the best superhero ever. He deserves a serious round of applause from everyone. Well, not from Wolverine after that battle because he wouldn't have arms, but everyone else. And now I'm so sad knowing this movie never got made. Such an epic attempt at a crossover would have forever changed the landscape of superhero movies and might have poised Fox's X-Men and Fantastic Four as cinema's most dominant comic franchise. Now that's a crazy thought. And the film sounds like it was shaping up to be epic. The Bourne Supremacy and the Bourne Ultimatum director Paul Greengrass was in line to direct the movie, and knowing his style, it's easy to see how the movie was attempting to go for a superhero political thriller. So why didn't this get made? Was it because Fox preferred to make the cinematic masterpiece that was Fox's Fantastic Four reboot in 2015? Heck no! It was because X-Men First Class was such a huge success, so Fox decided to move ahead with X-Men Days of Future Past instead. Which does lead to the next potential Wolverine movie. Although Days of Future Past was a big success, that wasn't always the plan for the franchise. First Class director Matthew Vaughn originally had a much different version for his new X-Men trilogy. Originally, Vaughn had intended to follow First Class with a film that he described as a new, young Wolverine in the 1970s. In an interview, he specifically mentioned casting Tom Hardy in the role. Stop and imagine that for a second. Tom Hardy as Wolverine? You know, that's not a bad pick. Hardy definitely looks like a man who could rock a pair of sideburns, doesn't he? And he has this look in his eyes that says, yeah, I've seen some stuff, so better not mess with me. So a film focusing on him would have been the next move in the First Class trilogy, even though it probably would break continuity with Jackman's cameo in First Class, but when has the X-Men franchise ever cared about proper continuity? If Vaughn's vision played out, then the trilogy would have ended with Days of Future Past that would have seen Jackman reprise his Wolverine role in the future and interact with his past, potentially Hardy-looking self, and probably pass the torch to the new actor. But of course, that didn't happen. Big studios have always had a problem with jumping the gun too early. After First Class's success, Fox decided to jump right into making Days of Future Past as the next film rather than listen to Vaughn and space things out. And Fox must have felt pretty good about their decision. Days of Future Past was a huge critical and commercial success. We'll never know if Vaughn's plan would have been better though, as after Days of Future Past, things went downhill for the X-Men faster than Quicksilver on a treadmill. The third film, X-Men Apocalypse, didn't match the critical or commercial success of Days of Future Past, and then Dark Phoenix became what can only be kindly described as a burning dumpster fire. Is that too harsh? Do you think things would have been better overall if Vaughn was allowed to make his 70s Wolverine movie first? I'm not so sure. I love Wolverine, and overall think the character works perfectly in a solo adventure. Sure, I love his team-ups too, but when he's by himself, it gives us more of a chance to really dive into what makes this cigar-chomping Canadian tick, you know? And that's why this final canceled Wolverine movie would have been super interesting. If you know Wolverine comics, you know one of his most famous arcs is when he travels to Japan. When X-Men Origins Wolverine came out, Fox was already planning out the next movie, called The Wolverine, and it would follow Logan in his Japan adventure. Originally, Tom Cruise's BFF Christopher McQuarrie came on board to write a script draft, and visionary director Darren Aronofsky became attached to direct, though it wasn't long before there was a complete overhaul. Right before the movie was slated to begin filming, Aronofsky officially left The Wolverine. James Mangold was brought in to completely re-tinker and retool the movie in his own way. The end result is alright. The Wolverine is by no means bad, but it did really feel like a test run for Mangold to make the film he really wanted to make, which was Logan. Although I'm incredibly thankful for Logan, it would have been fascinating to see what the Wolverine would have been like under Aronofsky's unique eye. It could have completely reshaped the Wolverine character. Man, there are a lot of canceled Wolverine movies, but it just goes to show how popular the character is, and hopefully we get even more films with the character in the future. What movie would you have liked to see most, and what other actors would you like to see as Wolverine?